First of all, I'd like to thank the WA Mining Club for partnering with Miners Promise. I am still in the mining industry in the sense that I'm a non-executive director with CPC Engineering, who are one of the sponsors here today. I'm sure most of you in this room read the Kalgoorlie Miner because it's the only regional daily newspaper. It's the oldest regional newspaper in Western Australia, and it's still a very great journal for mining. In yesterday's Cal Miner, you would have seen the St Barbara's Day Festival wrap. And of course, tomorrow is St Barbara's Day, and we all know St Barbara is the patron saint of mining, and we're commemorating those who have lost their lives in mining, and Tad made a very fitting tribute before we came to lunch. So that Kalgoorlie Miner wrap had a register of miners' deaths in the goldfields, and if you haven't seen it, it is really interesting to look at. It shows people who have died in the mining industry in the goldfields since the late 1890s. As you know, gold was only discovered in Kalgoorlie in 1893, Coolgardie 1892. Over the life of when mining was first discovered in the goldfields and now, 1,500 people have lost their lives, 1,500. And if you want to say what was the annual average, it works out 11.5 people per annum. It's a lot of people. We have a war memorial in Canberra that commemorates those who lost their lives in theatres of war, and it's fitting that we do. There's one entry on that register which I'd like to refer to, the mining death register, which was in the goldfields, or Kalgoorlie Mining Estate. And the name of that person is Stephen Fitzroy. He was aged 35. He was a sink slope miner at Central Norseman Gold Mine, and he died on the 14th of May 1991, 30 years ago. Widow was left Helen Fitzroy, and Helen, with me, started Miners Promise. Helen was in her early 30s and she had 3 young children. She got no support from anyone but her family and friends for a number of years. As part of that grieving process, she wrote a book, and I'm sure many of you would have seen it. It's called Just a Number, A Personal Account of Grief. That's Helen's story, and it is a very compelling story. So when I was working with BHP in Westall, BHP Billiton as it was then, I met Helen, and basically in 2009, you might recall, there were a number of fatalities over a number of years in BHP Billiton, and BHP Billiton Iron Ore had a contractors mining safety forum at which Helen spoke. And I spoke to Helen and I said to Helen, "What's your aspiration?" She said, "I want to have something like defence and police." I said, "You mean a legacy?" She said, "Absolutely." So we put our heads together and we created Miners Promise. Now, why do we have it today? Ron Sayers gave that very good example of the Ausdrill Way, and that's fantastic. That used to happen in mining communities. There were friendly societies, and people who lived in a mining town all got together, they put money in and they looked after their own. But today the world's changed because we have FIFO and drive-in, drive-out workers who come from all over the state, all over the nation, and from other countries like New Zealand. So the world's changed. So Miners Promise is the modern-day friendly society, and it's very important that we have that. Now, basically, it's an arm's-length relationship that provides direct support to the family of a person who has been seriously injured or dies who works in the resources sector. That's mining and oil and gas. It's an apolitical, not-for-profit charitable organisation, just like Defence Legacy and Police Legacy. Resource sector fatalities, serious injuries involve multiple investigations. We know there'll be the Mine Safety Inspectorate, and we know there's this new strengthened legislation in that particular space which has come into effect. We will have, if it's a fatality, a coronial inquiry, and the police will be involved. And then invariably, the company will do its own internal investigation. Now, If you are a person who has been affected by someone who has been killed in a mining accident, you suffer from bewilderment. And these are Helen's own words. This is Helen's quote. "I saw people crying out for basic information on process, legal advice, access to support services, and often just emotional support when they had no one to talk to. I saw people crumbling under the weight of emotional, legal, financial and bureaucratic challenges that plagued them for months after the event. And there is no single organisation dedicated to providing legacy services specific for the resources sector. Defence has defence legacy, police has police legacy. Miners' Promise is the only equivalent for the resources sector. Miners' Promise provides practical, emotional, financial support services for miners and their families when a tragic event has occurred. The promise responds usually within 72 hours of being notified, and this event could be a fatality, serious illness, incapacity or an accident. Miners' Promise exists to shine a light into the future and help families gradually find a path to a new life. Over 200 families have been supported by Miners' Promise since we started, and I have a number of examples here, but I suggest that you go on to the Miners' Promise website, which is info@minerspromise.org.au, and there's many examples of families. Now, it doesn't have to be a mine site or an oil and gas site accident. It can be a person who is injured or becomes ill outside the work scene. An example that I would give you here is a guy by the name of Steve Shotton. We supported Steve and his family for 18 months through terminal brain cancer. He and his daughter wrote stories before Steve passed away at the beginning of this year. Once again, they're on the website. We have here Sarah Garvey today, who does a fantastic job in running Miners' Promise, and she is very keen to talk to any of you. These are the companies that are involved, because we can have corporate membership, and this is just a few examples. BHP, Mount Gibson Iron, Norton Goldfields, Black Cat Syndicate, Rio Tinto, Citic Pacific, Evolution, KCGM, Northern Star, McMahon, South 32, Westrac, Worthy Parts, Tees and Fenner Dunlop. You can also be a member of Miners' Promise and make a contribution, and the contributions are tax deductible. Today I understand, are going to have donor cards. Is that right, Cassandra? Or no? Sorry? Yes, yeah, the donation was, but we've got to move on. Okay, all right. So, you could donate today. So I'd just like to say thank you on this very important day, which is really celebrating St Barbara's Day and recognising all those who've not only died in the course of their work with the resources sector, but also those who've been seriously injured and who are continue to be with us. So thank you very much once again to the WA Mining Club for being a partner in this very important cause. Thank you.